You love each other. You support each other. You're building a life together. But there's one thing no one talks about out loud. One of you earns more. Maybe a little more. Maybe a lot more. And even if neither of you says it, it changes things. It changes decisions. It changes arguments. It changes confidence. It can even change respect. Today, we're talking about the psychological and financial dynamics of income imbalance and how smart couples navigate it without letting money distort the relationship. Let's say Alex earns $140,000 a year. Maya earns $65,000. They both work hard. They both contribute. But financially, the weight isn't equal. Now here's what often happens, quietly. The higher earner may feel, I'm carrying most of this. The lower earner may feel, am I contributing enough? No one says it directly, but it shows up in subtle ways. Who feels more pressure to stay at their job? Who feels more entitled to make big financial decisions? Who feels more anxious about layoffs? Income imbalance doesn't automatically create problems, but it creates psychological shifts. And if you don't manage those shifts, money becomes power. Income isn't just income, it's identity. For many people, especially in high-performance careers, income equals competence. Income equals value. Income equals status. So when one partner earns significantly more, it can unconsciously affect confidence, decision-making, voice in financial planning, long-term sacrifices. The higher earner might not intend to dominate decisions, but sometimes they think, well, I'm funding most of this. The lower earner might not intend to withdraw, but sometimes they feel, I don't have as much say. And that's where tension begins, not because of greed, but because of human psychology. Power in relationships isn't always aggressive. It's rarely someone saying, I make more, so I decide. That's obvious. That's easy to spot. Real power shifts are quieter. They show up in ordinary moments. It looks like house hunting. The realtor says, based on your income, you qualify for this range, and everyone instinctively looks at the higher earner. Not because anyone planned it that way, but because their salary unlocked the approval. So when it's time to choose between the modest home and the upgraded one, the higher earner's opinion carries a little more weight. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. It looks like investment conversations. Maybe one partner earns significantly more and also manages the brokerage account. They start saying things like, I'll handle the investments. Trust me, I've been researching. The intention isn't control, it's efficiency. But over time, one partner becomes the financial driver and the other becomes a passenger. It looks like spending decisions. The lower earner standing in a store thinking, should I run this by them first? Not because they need permission, but because internally they know the numbers aren't equal. And sometimes it's even quieter than that. It looks like the higher earner lying awake at night thinking, if I mess this up, everything falls apart. They may not feel powerful, they feel responsible, over-responsible. They might stay in a job they hate. They might tolerate stress they shouldn't because they believe the entire lifestyle depends on them. Meanwhile, the lower earner might feel something different. Gratitude mixed with insecurity. Appreciation mixed with vulnerability. If something ever happened between us, would I be okay? Even in loving, stable relationships, that thought can exist in the background. Income imbalance creates emotional asymmetry. Not in love, not in commitment, but in perceived leverage. One partner may feel like the engine, the other may feel like they're being carried. And when that dynamic goes unspoken, small tensions accumulate. A comment during an argument, a defensive tone during budgeting, a silent hesitation before making a purchase. No explosions, just micro-fractures. And asymmetry, if unmanaged, becomes instability. Not because one person is bad, but because humans are wired to notice imbalance. That's why couples who openly address income dynamics early, respectfully, intentionally, tend to stay emotionally aligned. Because power doesn't damage relationships. Unspoken power does. Now add kids to the equation. Often, the lower earner becomes the logical candidate to reduce hours or stay home. Financially, it makes sense, but long-term, it compounds imbalance. Now, one partner earns less, builds fewer retirement benefits, has lower career momentum, and may feel financially vulnerable. Even in healthy relationships, this can create resentment, loss of identity, and long-term insecurity, which is why couples must plan intentionally, not react emotionally. Now, let's flip the perspective. People assume the higher earner has power. They imagine confidence, control, leverage. But they don't see is the pressure. Because when your income carries most of the structure, it doesn't feel like power, it feels like responsibility. Sometimes overwhelming responsibility. The higher earner might not say it out loud, but internally they're thinking, I can't burn out. I can't afford to hate this job. I can't quit. If I mess this up, everything collapses. That's a heavy mental load to carry every single day. It shows up in subtle ways. It looks like checking work emails at dinner. It looks like saying yes to overtime they don't want. It looks like staying silent about career dissatisfaction because the timing isn't right. They may want to start a business, change industries, take a sabbatical, go back to school. But instead they think, not now, we rely on this. And the higher the income gap, the heavier that thought becomes. It's not dominance, it's weight. And weight changes behavior. It can make someone more cautious, more stressed, more irritable. Not because they feel superior, but because they feel solely responsible for protecting the lifestyle. And here's the emotional twist. Sometimes the higher earner feels alone. They may think, if I complain about my job, it sounds ungrateful. If I say I'm exhausted, it sounds weak. If I talk about pressure, it sounds dramatic. So they internalize it. They become the stable one, the reliable one, the income anchor. But anchors don't move easily, and that lack of movement can slowly turn into resentment, not toward their partner, but toward the situation. That's why income imbalance isn't just about fairness, it's about emotional load distribution. Because when one partner feels like the financial engine of the household, they don't just earn more, they carry more perceived risk. And over time, carrying risk changes how someone shows up in a relationship. That's not power, that's pressure. And pressure, if left unspoken, reshapes behavior in ways couples don't always anticipate.
So what do emotionally intelligent couples do differently? They understand something crucial. Income is a number. Authority is a choice, and they refuse to confuse the two. They separate income from decision-making power because money earned does not equal voice earned, and contribution isn't measured only in dollars. It's measured in effort, in sacrifice, in emotional labor, in childcare, in stability, in support. Emotionally intelligent couples ask, what feels fair? Not just what's mathematically equal. They create joint financial goals, not my savings and your investments, but shared vision. Where do we want to live? When do we want flexibility? What kind of life are we building? When goals are shared, income becomes a tool, not leverage. They make large decisions together. Even if one partner earns more, even if one understands investing better, even if one technically qualifies for the loan, because inclusion builds security and exclusion builds distance. They recognize non-financial contributions, the partner who handles more childcare, manages the household, coordinates family logistics, supports during stressful career seasons. Those contributions don't show up on a paycheck, but they absolutely show up in the relationship, and healthy couples acknowledge that openly. They use proportional budgeting instead of strict 50-50 splits, because 50-50 sounds fair, but it isn't when incomes differ. If one partner earns twice as much, expecting equal dollar contributions can quietly create strain. Proportional contributions feel collaborative. They protect dignity on both sides, and most importantly, they protect both partners' long-term security. For example, if one partner reduces career growth for children, they don't just say, that's what makes sense financially. They intentionally increase retirement contributions in that partner's name. They talk about career reentry plans. They discuss long-term financial independence because sacrifice today should not create vulnerability tomorrow. And if one partner earns more, they don't own the lifestyle. They don't think, this is my house, this is my money, this is my decision. They think, we designed this together. They co-design the structure. They co-own the risks. They co-own the future. Because a relationship is not a corporation. There are no shareholders. There is no majority control. It's a partnership, and partnerships require respect, not revenue comparison. When couples understand that, income imbalance loses its emotional charge. It becomes logistics, not hierarchy. And that's the difference between money creating distance and money strengthening the bond. The healthiest model isn't pretending income is equal, because sometimes it's not. One partner may earn significantly more. One may work fewer hours. One may pause their career for children. Pretending those differences don't exist doesn't create harmony. It creates avoidance. Healthy couples don't ignore imbalance. They design around it. They focus on structuring fairness. And fairness isn't about matching numbers. It's about protecting dignity, voice, and long-term security for both people. That might look like a joint account for shared expenses. This becomes the we account. Housing, groceries, utilities, savings goals. Money flows into a shared space that represents the partnership. It reinforces the mindset, we fund our life together. Not I pay more or you contribute less, just this is ours. Personal spending accounts for autonomy. Even in loving relationships, autonomy matters. Each partner should have money they can spend freely, without explanation, permission, or guilt. That freedom protects individuality. It prevents small purchases from turning into power negotiations. It keeps independence alive inside partnership. Equal voice in financial decisions. Even if one partner earns more, even if one is more financially savvy, major decisions, buying a home, investing aggressively, changing careers, require 2 yeses, because the impact affects both lives. Voice equality builds trust, and trust reduces tension. Transparent long-term planning, not just paying bills month to month, but asking deeper questions. What happens if one of us stops working? What does retirement look like? How are we protecting both futures? If something happened to one of us, would the other be secure? Transparency removes fear. It replaces assumption with clarity. And when both partners feel secure, respected, and heard, income differences lose emotional power, because power thrives in silence and uncertainty. When everything is openly discussed, intentionally structured, and mutually agreed upon, money stops being a hierarchy. It becomes a resource. And that's the real goal. Not equal income, equal dignity, equal say, equal respect, equal protection. Because in a strong partnership, security isn't determined by who earns more. It's determined by whether both people feel valued regardless of the paycheck. If one partner earns more in your relationship, that's not a flaw. It's normal. But here's the question that matters. Is income creating pressure or partnership? Because money amplifies what's already there. If you design your structure intentionally, income imbalance becomes a strength. If you ignore it, it becomes silent tension. Love doesn't erase financial dynamics, but clarity does. Build income together, but build respect and structure first. 2 incomes, 1 smart plan. If this video resonated with you, subscribe to 2 Income Couple for practical strategies that help modern couples build wealth without building resentment. And here's a question for you. In your relationship, does income influence decision-making, even subtly? Let's talk about it in the comments.